we're seeing teams keep that mindset of being equipped to provide the experience that the consumers are looking for, no matter what that experience is. Whereas before, I feel like personally, I feel like a lot of owners and managers and on-site teams tried to fit the consumer into what they wanted to offer. And now they're looking at it the other way around of, well, what do our prospects want and how can I provide that?
Hello, and welcome to Sink or Swim, a weekly podcast brought to you by Realync, where we take a deep dive into the PropTech, multifamily, and rental housing industry. In each episode, we uncover the technologies and strategies used to help overcome operational challenges and increase the value of your multifamily investments. So, let's get into our conversation today.
Okay, so welcome back to Sink or Swim. I'm Mitch Fanning with Realync, and joining me today is Matt Weirich, co-founder and CEO of Realync, a video leasing platform in the multifamily space. Matt, how you doing today?
Good, Mitch. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Well, first, thanks for doing this. And we're going to be talking obviously a lot about video leasing and kind of how it's kind of evolved since COVID. And obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about COVID. We can't get through a conversation these days without talking a little bit about that. We won't say new normal. We definitely won't say new normal, but and the whole idea around leasing properties unseen. But before we start, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got in the industry and how you got the idea for Realync.
Yeah, absolutely. So it definitely goes back. 2011 was the origin for the idea, which I can't believe that's 10 years ago now. But I was graduating from Purdue University, moving up to Chicago, which isn't a crazy far distance, about 2, maybe 3 hours, depending on traffic. And when I was looking for a place to live, I ended up driving up to Chicago 6 weekends in a row to look at properties, looked at over 40 different properties in person. And it was a pretty painful process because at least half of those, I walked in and instantly turned around and walked out. I knew within seconds I wasn't going to be living there. So it really made me question why it was such an inefficient process looking for a place to live. Relatively sight unseen, quote unquote sight unseen. I was still traveling up there, but yeah, it just made me question the overall apartment search process, lack of availability to see my exact unit online and what that caused with the in-person reliance. And so it just so happens that May 2011 was when FaceTime came out, which is crazy. Now it feels like FaceTime is just a standard part of everyday life and that it's been around forever.
Exactly.
So kind of put 2 and 2 together that I absolutely would have used something like FaceTime to connect with my agent or the leasing team or someone to preview the spaces and make my physical in-person touring a lot more efficient. But I ended up sitting on the idea for a couple of years, didn't make any moves on that original idea, but started my career as a management consultant at Accenture. And as a consultant, I was on the road for 3 years straight, Monday through Thursday, every single week. And one of the trends that I saw repeated time and time again amidst my colleagues was how hard looking for real estate was, not being able to physically be there to tour. And that pain point just kept popping up time and time again in my life. And so finally, I was actually at a work event and my now co-founder, Ani, him and I were colleagues at Accenture and talking about what's next. He was part of a startup at Northwestern University, wanted to do something entrepreneurial. So I pitched him the idea, and the very next weekend we were in my apartment whiteboarding, laying the foundation for what is now Realync.
And so you mentioned 2011, but when you started kind of whiteboarding, what year was that?
Yeah, so that was the end of 2013. And then we brought the very first MVP version of the Realync platform to market in 2014.
When you were looking as a renter and you'd walk into these spaces, and some of the responses you're going to give me are obvious, but what were some of the reasons why, based on, what you saw, you said, wait a minute, no, this isn't for me, knowing that it was a fit in the initial kind of screening, but then when you saw it, what was the disconnect there?
Yeah, I mean, when you looked at an apartment website, you could see photos of the model unit. And typically that was about it, besides a 2D floor plan. And in a big city like Chicago, view, natural light, full west facing or east facing view versus partially obstructed, fully obstructed, things like that. I'm clearly a big view and natural light guy. That's where I gravitate to. But even things down to the finishings and the quality of the tile, the carpet. Is the sliding closet door on track, or is it partially hanging off of the track? And just little things like that you never notice online, but you absolutely notice in person. I'm very particular with my real estate, and there was I don't want to sound too bougie, but there was definitely a laundry list of boxes that I was looking to check that very quickly would be unchecked by just walking in and seeing the unit.
So we're going to put a pin on that, because we're going to talk a little bit towards the end about, your idea of like a perfect touring experience through video, and the idea of being authentic and being transparent. Because there's a couple things that I can kind of comment based on, our experience at Realync. The other thing too is the whole when the technology comes out. So a lot of times, even giving just a simple example like social networks, when mobile became a thing, it kind of was the catalyst, because a lot of people started using Facebook on their mobile. I guess my question is, knowing that kind of FaceTime became the technology, did you feel like it was partly because you were just doing other things, or did you feel like it was just too early? It was just too early to kind of move on that.
Definitely too early. I don't know if you remember, but even when FaceTime first came out, 4G LTE wasn't even the thing yet. We were still in the 3G era.
Yeah.
And so to use FaceTime, you had to be on Wi-Fi. It actually did not work on a 3G network. And so there were just some of those early barriers about connectivity and whole home internet and Wi-Fi extenders and hotspots throughout a community and things like that really weren't a thing back in 2011. And so sat on it, A, because I was starting my career fresh out of college as a consultant, but B, because I recognized some of the constraints with being able to really fulfill that live virtual touring, video leasing sort of idea that I had was going to be, part of that was going to be outside of my purview. And I didn't want to get into the business of having to help a community figure out their connectivity throughout the property in order to use my platform.
Yep.
And so it was kind of chicken and egg on that a little bit.
100%. So 2013, you guys start whiteboarding. You guys kick out a MVP 2014. I'm not from this industry. I joined Realync a couple of years ago. I'm from kind of the B2B kind of software SaaS space, and from a whole MarTech kind of marketing sales software, we've seen since like 2006-7, like HubSpot, like that was kind of the initial, like the CRM, Salesforce. There was a lot going on. And it's evolved, and I think it still has some runway to go as far as the MarTech space, just outside of this industry. However, 2014 starts. You guys start working on your MVP. Give me a sense of what you saw from like 2014 to say 2020, because I think the prop tech space was catching fire. You saw investment. You saw investors wanting more data, like wanting ways to streamline their operations. But give me a sense of like what that looked like.
It's been incredible when you look at that window over a 6-year span. Back in 2013, 2014, prop tech wasn't even like a widely known term. No. And I don't even know if it was formally coined back then or not. We called ourselves a real estate technology company. And now we would sound so old for saying real estate technology. It's prop tech. It was incredible, the attention that prop tech got very quickly. Right after we launched, I would say about 6 months after we launched our MVP, there were multiple prop tech accelerators starting up in Chicago, multiple in venture capital groups and investment groups that were turning eyes on it. One of our very early clients and partners, Waterton Residential, they even created an internal innovation team, and they were looking to partner with some of those accelerators, some of those investors to really help spur, foster, and be a part of innovation in the real estate space, which was a super exciting time to get into it for sure. But in terms of our journey, it also was, I won't say a slow one, it was a linear one.
Yeah.
And from 14 to 19, we saw really good, steady, linear growth. But especially for the multifamily space, it was a very educational sales process. And there was a slowly growing percentage of the consumer audience that was looking for a better experience when touring properties, but it wasn't really a catalyst for on-site leasing teams and management teams to change yet. And when introducing video leasing and virtual leasing, they were thinking of it from a marketing standpoint. Virtual tours were marketing tools that sit on their listing, sit on their website for people to engage with on their own. And then touring means physically come to the property and touring in person. And so there was resistance. There was obviously early adopters, as there are with any technology, that proved out incredible value on our platform of being able to double, triple, and sometimes even quadruple their lead to lease conversion rates by introducing virtual leasing into the equation. And so a lot of eyes were really starting to open up to it. At industry conferences like NMHC OpTech, it started to get more and more attention on stage about how the leasing process is evolving. Self-guided tours came into the space, and there was just a lot more attention on how that part of the resident lifecycle can be enhanced, evolve, streamline, things like that. And so your timeline was a good timeline of 14 to end of 19, because 2020, everything when you talk virtual changed. It
changed 100%. And so, it's interesting, again, coming from the outside and looking at just different how a vertical adopts a technology, if you will, kind of just being a student of that. The other thing too, and correct me if I'm wrong, but one thing I noticed was the tech hubs for prop tech seemed to me to be kind of going from east to west. It was New York, it is Texas, it's Chicago. I'd say Chicago is a good one, and it's Seattle, just kind of due to Redfin and Zillow, where a lot of them were kind of outside of the Silicon Valley, like a lot of them. And so that's kind of an interesting thing. So I see, did that, I guess my question or my comment was, did that kind of help, or do you see that, like that connection to that kind of hub? Was that a kind of connecting point?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I love that you recognize that, because it's an interesting call out, and I can't necessarily put my finger on exactly why it's that way. Like in my mind, there's some sort of disconnect between the real estate vertical and pure B2B SaaS go-to-market strategies.
Yep.
It's definitely a different space with different go-to-market strategies to be able to hit it, but it's definitely evolving. And I think the real estate space is becoming more accustomed and attuned to that pure B2B SaaS experience and expectation. I also think there's something to those markets that you called out. There's an innate hunger to prove oneself, I guess. There's no overinflation of valuations or building a business purely for the multiples. It's building a business to be successful, make an impact, and make revenue, and be sustainable businesses and things like that, versus simply building for the next round. And I'm not saying all value-based businesses do that, but I think there is some sort of blue collar is not the right word, but there's a grittiness to a lot of prop tech companies.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I mean, we talked a little bit about the idea that the investors, wanted more data, and that's kind of been pushing it. obviously on the renting side, people are used to, booking an Uber, getting their Starbucks through the mobile. Not everything is almost product led. It's almost like more they want digital. But I also noticed as well, these companies, whether you're a property management company, whether you're an owner operator, or even an asset manager, you're starting to get these people inside that are becoming real professionals, like marketing and leasing professionals. And and as a result, you're starting to see that actually be an evolution as a professional, because 5 years ago, they didn't have all of these technologies that had to integrate. So now you're seeing that somebody has to come in as a marketer and pull these things all together, or there's teams within those operations that have to now understand that, whereas 5-10 years ago they didn't. So it's almost becoming a profession unto itself, and it's expanding what that profession looks like, which I think is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when you look on site, the profile of a successful leasing agent today is very different than it was 5-10 years ago. And the leasing agents that are adopting technology and evolving and shifting to consumer demands and trends and things like that are the ones that are seeing a lot of success. And I think it is a testament to the industry stepping up and stepping into this new season. I won't say new normal, this new season that we're in, and being willing to shift and try new things, which is super exciting.
Absolutely. Now, kind of shifting gears or kind of, moving forward in the conversation, definitely has experienced incredible growth as a result of, 2020, as a result of COVID, people accelerating the need to go digital, of course. I guess the question is, like, what's been your biggest takeaway from all this? I'd be curious. I mean, we've been thinking, we talk about this a lot internally, just, we've been fortunate enough to have that kind of same kind of trajectory because of the environment we're in, partly. What's been your kind of biggest takeaway?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of times you hear about something being a catalyst for change, and that's 100% what COVID was for our industry in a lot of ways. And while the industry was shifting and was adopting new technology, it was happening slowly. And you would see a lot of owners and managers that would try things out on a property or two, but there was really no plan beyond that property or two of, well, what does success look like here? And once we see that, does that mean you're rolling this out to the rest of your properties? Or what does that mean? And I think now we're seeing companies approach it from more of a top-down, corporate-wide strategic approach of, okay, all of our teams need access to this technology, not just our lease ups, and leave the stabilized properties out to dry and solely because we're maximizing the NOI on them. All of our teams need access to this baseline package of technologies and offerings, and we're going to marry that up with training and support and things like that. And so it's really been incredible seeing the shift from a lot of the corporate teams as well as the on-site teams of how they're leaning into adopting, integrating, and implementing technology, not with that we'll try it out mindset.
Yeah.
They're diving headfirst into it as a solution that they know they need for their business to thrive moving forward. And even as we come out of shelter in place and quarantine and all of that, we're seeing teams keep that mindset of being equipped to provide the experience that the consumers are looking for, no matter what that experience is. Whereas before, I feel like personally, I feel like a lot of owners and managers and on-site teams tried to fit the consumer into what they wanted to offer. And now they're looking at it the other way around of, well, what do our prospects want and how can I provide that?
Yeah. And it's kind of, again, just in my world, it's kind of reducing the friction of the whole life cycle, right? Like in a lot of cases, you look at how somebody becomes from a lead to a customer, and the expansion, and you try to reduce friction. And I think what video does in many ways is it reduces the friction. And it's an easy thing to kind of get your head around. Speaking of kind of use cases and trends, when I was doing some research for this conversation, one interesting use case that I found, video, it was a customer testimonial, and a customer used Realync to verify an applicant's proof of ID, I believe, by getting them to actually, when they're having real-time conversations in video, to getting them to hold up their ID to prove that, because in most cases they're not comfortable actually sharing that either via email, or they can't come into the physically to get into that conversation for one reason or another. So the question is, what other interesting use cases have you or your team noticed? Like, there's the straightforward ones like the marketing, but what are some of these like interesting ones where you're like, oh, it's an interesting use case?
Yeah, that's what's so fun about it. We don't limit the creative possibilities of our clients on the platform. We really leave the creative direction up to them of how they use Realync to create their pre-recorded videos, use it for live tours, you name it. We've seen some really creative virtual open houses. We saw a team out in Maryland. They did a Price is Right themed virtual open house, which was super fun and creative. They dressed up, got really into it. And it was a really cool way for them to engage with their audience online and host a large number of people through their property at one time. But in terms of those really cool, different use cases that teams might not be thinking for with video, we saw a huge increase in maintenance videos. Teams creating very simple how-to videos of how to program your HVAC, how to reset a tripped breaker, care tips for your in-unit washer and dryer, how to clean out the lint trap, and things like that. We even had a student property that had a heavy presence of international students that didn't know they needed shower curtains. And so they recorded a video about why you need shower curtains in the bathroom. And so it's a really cool way to just communicate a message and help people understand something. I'd say another really interesting use case that was client driven for us and opened our eyes to a cool use case was self-guided tours. Self-guided tours are really growing in popularity, where consumers want to come to our property, but they don't necessarily want the leasing agent there throughout the tour with them. And there's an abundance of self-guided tour companies and platforms to make it safe, secure, access, all of that. But the pain point with that is there's no voice of the leasing team guiding that prospect through the tour and answering their questions and things like that. And so we've seen a growing number of teams create QR codes on signage that they'll place throughout that self-guided tour path, and the QR codes link to a video of the leasing agent in that room or in that amenity talking through the upgraded countertops or the beautiful sunset views or how you can schedule and book this amenity and things like that. So it's keeping the voice of that leasing team in that self-guided tour path without having to physically be a part of it, which is really cool.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss an episode by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now let's get back to the show.
So I want to kind of mention one thing, and I kind of hate to kind of come back. I've been thinking about this for a couple of days. I guess is why it just keeps coming back into my conversations about this. And product-led growth is something that is more on the software side. Most people in multifamily probably don't even know what that means. But again, what you told me when you start getting maintenance videos, how I see it is resident success.
Mm-hmm.
It's knowledge base. It's now it's the marketing, it's the leasing, but now it's like there's a reservoir of videos to not only help your residents solve problems which has its own use cases or business cases, or in terms of why you'd want to do that as a business, as an operator. But then there's the whole side of retention.
Mm-hmm.
No turn, like less turn. So it's interesting just in this conversation how you can apply that video strategy across, right, from the marketing and leasing, but also resident success.
Exactly. And to your point about that, the really cool thing with video is how it really does play throughout the entire resident lifecycle. And it's such I think you used these words earlier, transparent and authentic way to communicate a message. And we're seeing teams create move-in videos. Instead of sending a packet of information of what to expect on move-in day, they're adding a voice to it, and that voice provides empathy, humanizes the message, and it gets clicks. People want to engage with video. And some other really cool use cases on the resident engagement side of it. We actually have some affordable government subsidized sort of properties using Realync where they have on-site service coordinators. And that on-site service coordinator's sole job is to empower the residents, to teach them new skills, to help them create and fine-tune resumes, to get jobs, to do things like that. And they've been using the Realync platform to host enablement sessions, training sessions, empowering resident events, and things like that, which is really cool. They're using it to just feed into their residents and help empower them to grow. And so yeah, video's so powerful in a number of different ways beyond just marketing and things like that.
Kind of switching gears, what kind of comes to the topic of the day is the interesting trend is, and before we kind of, I get your thoughts on it, I'm going to kind of share a couple stats that I heard recently. In 2020, Redfin claimed that 63% of home buyers, so this is on the home buying side, bought sight unseen, which, when you think about that for a second, is amazing. And there's a Zillow stat that claimed that 40% of millennials were comfortable buying homes online. So again, this is on the for sale side, of course, but I think it translates very nicely that if you're not buying, and I think there's a correlation there. This whole idea that people are signing leases without having physically toured the property. I guess, do you see it, continuing? And like, where in your mind, if you just had to kind of throw out a prediction, are we going to get to a point where it's like, 60 to 80% you're going to start to see, like, without actually even seeing the place?
Yeah, it's super interesting. Those stats you gave being on the for sale side of the industry, I would say it's probably a factor higher than that for apartments, because the home purchase process is a lot bigger of a commitment than a 12-month lease. And it is super interesting, even back pre-COVID. So it was, I think it was November of 19, the Kingsley report came out. And that fall of 2019 was the first time in the Kingsley report that they reported on a percent of consumers no longer wanting to visit a property in person before signing the lease. And back then, fall of 19, in that report, I believe the stat was 14% or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And obviously that's only grown through 2020. And I'm with you. I feel like moving forward out of 2020 and 2021 and beyond, it is going to be the trend as long as authenticity and transparency are in that virtual leasing experience. I think as long as a consumer can see what they want to see, meaning the exact unit that they might be living in, and have their questions answered and have trust instilled in that virtual process, I think we'll see it continue to rise. And there's always going to be the people that want to physically see it before they move in. And there'll be the hybrid where they want to maybe preview 3 or 4 units before visiting the property, and then they've down selected and they look at 1 unit in person before they sign the lease. But I really do think it's going to continue to increase. We'll see this not battle between physical and digital for multifamily, but we'll see we'll see a balance, and it'll be a marriage, and it really should be fully integrated leasing experience where there really is no difference, no gap, or no extraneous circumstances for a prospect that wants to be 100% digital or a prospect that wants to be 100% physical. It should all be streamlined, efficient, integrated, and a very transparent leasing experience for them.
Yeah, and it's going to obviously depend on the product. I mean, if it's a Class A downtown, you're going to have younger people. They're more used to the video. You're going to need that probably play out all through, or like pull it when you need it. In some cases, just top of funnel, just keeping it so that, people can kind of make a decision and get to a decision-making process on like, yeah, they want to reach out, and you have all that information. So, you mentioned a couple of things, and I'm not looking for like a top 12, checklist, but we've brought up the whole idea around being authentic and transparency. And I do think that's important. And again, it also dovetails with, people are having to learn new skills, video creating skills, which goes back to the comment I made about being professional and having to learn new skills. But what are the kind of the best practices that you can apply across all base cases to make that kind of perfect video touring experience? Some best practice, maybe where should people start, pre versus like, in person, or, in person kind of recording? Like, what are kind of like off the back of the napkin, 3 to 5 things that people need to do in order to actually be authentic and transparent?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first thing people need to do is get over themselves. That's the first hump. Everyone wants it to be a masterpiece. They want it to be perfect, show the property in the best light, which obviously you don't want it to look bad. There's basic foundational things that you can do to make your video look good enough. Pan slowly. That is the number one thing. People pan too fast. A, the person watching the video can't even see what you're trying to show them. Yeah. B, probably going to make them sick. And C, it doesn't look good. So pan slowly. We always tell our clients, stand and pan. A lot of people will just walk through the space and they're always moving, and walking while recording is innately shaky. And if you just position yourself in the corner of the room and do a slow pan of that space without walking, it's going to show well. You'll be surprised how smooth you can pan just using your phone, no anti-shake mount or anything.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's really just piecing it together with some basic editing functionality. So the number one thing that we really focus on is individual clips of video, which obviously does require having a platform to edit all that together. The Realync app allows that, stitch your clips together, whatnot. But by not making it one long continuous video, you can cut out the transition time of walking from one space to the next. You can really add a nice look and feel to it by having those transitions space to space to space. And it really allows you, the recorder, the creator of the video, to it's forgiving that way. So if you're doing one long continuous video clip and you mess up 3 minutes into it, well, crap, now you have to start back at the beginning all over again. Whereas if you're 12 seconds into a 20-second video clip, you just re-record that clip and you're not out another 3-minute effort. And so there's a lot of those basic things that you can do to make it a more simple and forgiving video creation process. But my number one tip of getting over yourself, so many people don't like how they sound on video. They don't want to be in the video. They don't think it's quality enough. But just take 60 seconds and scroll Facebook. 90% of the videos that you see out there are shot on an iPhone. And that's what consumers are used to seeing today. It doesn't have to be some full production, staged lighting, microphone sort of production to add value to your prospect. So that's ultimately what immediately comes to mind to me. We do provide our clients with a DJI Osmo anti-shake gimbal. I will say, for the price, dollar for dollar, it is the single most beneficial investment to make. It truly smooths out the videos, gives it that drone-like floating look and feel. And the nice thing about it is you really can't pan too fast using that gimbal because it will slowly catch up even if you whip the camera around. So it really does help increase the quality of it and just gives people confidence in what they're shooting when you put something like that in their hands.
Is that something that you white label, or can you kind of buy that on Amazon? If so, I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a growing number of gimbals out there, and the number one thing to consider if someone's looking to purchase their own is the weight of your device. Not all gimbals are created equal, and the motors can burn out very quickly. And so the reason we partner with DJI on the Osmos is because they can actually handle the most weight. So when you look at the plus size devices and screen size getting bigger and all of that, the Osmos are really, in our opinion, the quality, durable performer of the mix. But there are some more affordable ones. If you have a smaller SE device or something like that, there are some more affordable options on Amazon that you can get that will do just fine as well.
So I want to keep respectful of your time, but I want to slip one more question before we kind of bring this to a close. Not to put you on the spot, but so obviously when you create a video, and I'll just use YouTube because everyone kind of knows that, there are specific analytics that they provide, and there are also video platforms that aren't industry specific to multifamily that have done that, and they have different use cases on why you should create video. And I'm not going to bring them up, but they're different analytics. So the question really is, are you providing like industry specific analytics, or is it a bit of both? I guess the question is, why should somebody use that versus say another platform?
Yeah, I always say being built for multifamily is a big consideration for anyone looking to integrate video into their processes. And built for multifamily means multifamily specific functionality when creating the videos, hosting the live video tours. There's a lot of reasons why FaceTime and Zoom and some of those platforms have some gaps compared to a built for multifamily live video touring solution. But at the end of the day, the number one thing I'll say is FaceTime will never integrate into Yardi or Entrata or your lead management system. It's just not going to. Whereas something built for multifamily is going to have those integrations from your top of funnel ILS website, marketing integrations through your lead management system, your resident engagement app and platform. It's going to be an integrated solution, pushing and pulling data and putting things where you need it to be an efficient process, but also a tracked, compliant process, and one that your company can all collectively operate within. Those not built for multifamily solutions, there are a lot of PMCs that have created really good defined processes around them, but it still leaves room for variability from property to property, person to person, if it's not a fully integrated solution that can be tracked to make sure that people are doing exactly what they need to be doing in it. And so with Realync, obviously built for multifamily, fully integrated throughout the entire resident lifecycle, all the different places. But one of the nuances and call outs to the data point that you mentioned, YouTube will show you macro views and you can see how many views are on a video. But with Realync, we actually have unique link tracking. And if I send you 5 videos to preview a property, I actually get notifications in real time and analytics in our platform that tells me what video you're watching, when you're watching it, how many times you're watching it. I know exactly what you have or haven't engaged with. And as a leasing professional, if I have 35 active prospects and 10 of them have ghosted me for 2 weeks, but all of a sudden I see that someone's engaging with the content, I'm going to pick up the phone and call that person to follow up. I know they're engaging, they're thinking about it, and things like that. And so there's a lot of leasing automation and leasing insights that can be garnered from the interactions and the activities that someone takes with your videos at the top of funnel on the website, how that trickles into the leasing process, how they're engaging with that, and things like that. So there's a lot of data that can be pulled to make a leasing professional and a property manager a lot more targeted and effective and efficient in what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, you had me at integrations. I mean, I can't stress that enough. We're seeing that too. The whole ops side and the tech stack. Again, people in these organizations, there's going to be an emerging role just focused on ops, to be quite honest. And it maybe already kind of exists, but they're not called that specifically. But making sure that all these things are integrative, whether natively or custom, is getting more and more important, and it's something we're also seeing. So as we kind of move to a smooth landing, and one question, and then kind of a couple quick fire rounds, and then we'll kind of. I'm a big fan of giving people back more time in their day. So, what does the next 3 to 5 years look like for multifamily in your view? Maybe Realync and maybe just video touring, specifically as a category.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the last question was a perfect segue for Realync on that front. It's helping teams be more efficient and make smarter, informed decisions. So there is a lot of data being collected based on the actions and activities and feedback that prospects and clients are giving throughout the entire process, from their very first touch point at the top of the funnel all the way through to them becoming residents. And there's a lot that we can pull to help make leasing teams more effective and efficient, to do things like lead scoring and automated follow-up and touch points and personalized follow-up and things like that. So there's some really cool things from the leasing insights and automation standpoint, as well as leaning into the resident engagement side of it more as well, of being a more integrated solution, helping optimize the operations for communities. Like you said, product-led growth. So there's some really fun opportunities there for us in particular. But as an industry, it's so hard to say. Had you asked that question a year and a half ago, it'd be very different than the answer today. And so I'm excited with the speed of improvement, the speed of innovation in multifamily, and I think that's only going to increase. We're seeing a lot of big moves by big players, both on the tech side and the owner-manager PMC side. And like you said, there's going to be some new positions brought into these companies that are going to really help integrate, streamline, and enhance what's happening with technology, what's happening on site. And I'm excited about it because we base a lot of our roadmap based on client feedback. And I think the client is becoming a lot more educated and specific in their asks. And it's really helping drive how fast that innovation is happening. So I think it's going to be good. Like I said earlier, I think a theme that we will see is that combination of physical plus digital. That's, in my opinion, going to continue to be a theme that we see iterating. And we collected a quote from one of our clients in 2020, and I feel like he really summed it up and hit the nail on the head. He said, "It's not my job as a leasing agent to tell a prospect what he or she can or can't do or does or doesn't want to see. It's my job to provide the opportunity." And I feel like that's going to be a mindset that we see more and more of in our industry, is having that service mindset of catering to the prospect, providing the opportunities to experience the space and have the experience living at that community that they're looking to have. So I'm excited for all that.
I think that's a great place to end, to be honest with you. And where can people find out more about Realync?
Yeah, so you can definitely catch us online, Realync, REALYNC.com. Check us out. We can also be reached sales at Realync, marketing at Realync, contact at Realync, you name it, all the general inboxes. But we're also very excited to get back to some physical in-person conferences and events and start to be in person with our industry again. We miss it.
I think we're all in that same boat, and we're all looking to kind of do fist pumps again, or at least elbow bumps. Well, that's it for another episode. I mean, Matt, thanks so much for doing this, and until next time, keep swimming.
Appreciate it, Mitch.
You've reached the end of another episode of Sink or Swim. Make sure to visit us at rensync.com/podcast to access show notes, key takeaways, and where you can sign up to our newsletter to receive free bonus content. If you found value in this show, please also remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode. Thanks for listening.